The day the town danced itself to death. Imagine walking out of your front door on a hot summer morning, only to find your neighbor standing in the middle of the street, dancing. No music is playing. There is no festival. And her face isn't filled with joy. It is twisted in pure, agonizing terror. In July 1518, in the city of Strasbourg, this exact nightmare came to life. What started with just one woman spinning wildly in the streets spiraled into a full-blown epidemic. Within weeks, hundreds of people were dancing uncontrollably. They couldn't stop. They didn't want to dance, but their bodies refused to listen. They danced until their feet bled, until they collapsed, and for some, until their hearts literally exploded from exhaustion. What drove an entire city into a fatal frenzy? Was it a curse? A deadly poison? Or a dark secret hidden inside the human mind? Today, we unlock history's most terrifying medical mystery, the dancing plague of 1518. To understand how a city loses its mind, we have to look at how it started. It all began with a woman named Frau Troffea. On an ordinary day in July, she stepped into a narrow street in Strasbourg and simply began to dance. There was no music, no celebration, and no warning. She just moved, twisted, and leaped. At first, her neighbors probably laughed. They thought it was a public spectacle, maybe a strange joke. But the hours ticked by. The sun went down, darkness fell, and Frau Troffea was still dancing. Her clothes were soaked in sweat. Her muscles were screaming. When the sun rose the next day, she hadn't stopped. She danced through the second day, and the third. By the time her feet were bruised and bleeding, the laughter in the town turned to absolute dread. Frau Troffea was completely unresponsive to anyone trying to speak to her. She was in a trance. Finally, after nearly 6 days of non-stop exertion, authorities intervened and dragged her away to a shrine in the mountains, hoping for a miracle. But it was already too late. The contagion had escaped. Within a week of Frau Troffea's containment, more people stepped into the streets and joined the frenzy. First, it was 30. Then, within a month, it grew to an estimated 400 people. Imagine looking out your window and seeing hundreds of your fellow citizens, mothers, blacksmiths, bakers, children, all locked in a horrific, synchronized nightmare. This wasn't a party. Historical records from city chronicles describe the dancers screaming in pain, begging for mercy, and crying out for help. Yet their legs kept moving. The heat of the midsummer sun was brutal. Dehydration set in. At the height of the plague, reports claim that as many as 15 people were dying every single day. The city of Strasbourg was entirely paralyzed. Shops closed, religious services stopped, and the air was filled with the terrifying sound of hundreds of gasping breaths and shuffling feet. As the bodies piled up, the city council panicked. They called in the town's top physicians and theologians to find a cure. Now, you might think they ordered people to be quarantined or tied down to rest. But medieval medical theory worked a bit differently. The doctors concluded that the dancers were suffering from hot blood, a natural brain imbalance that forced them to overheat. And what was the brilliant scientific cure for hot blood? More dancing. Yes, you heard that correctly. The doctors decided that the only way to cure the plague was to let the victims dance it out. The city council actually cleared out market squares, built massive wooden stages, and, to make things even crazier, they hired professional musicians and strongmen to keep the victims upright and moving. The result? It was like pouring gasoline on a wildfire. The music and the stages only encouraged more people to succumb to the trance. The death toll skyrocketed. Realizing they had made a catastrophic mistake, the council quickly banned all public music and dancing entirely.